I'll just go through some few highlights that's going on here. We have been flat out on about 4 or 5 different projects, one of which is this huge MIT project or conference next week for the folks in New England or Boston. So this is at the CSAIL, which is the Computer Science AI Lab at MIT. It's the largest lab over there. And it's a 60th year anniversary. And it's an all-day event where they're having the 60 of the researchers give short talks. And we've been helping, John Werner's a promoter. We've been helping a variety of things, one of which is they're creating social media assets where they're actually going through and at least talking about, some of the different talented people they have over there and helping them get the word out on social media. But it'll be a great event for the folks who are attending. If you are in town and don't get in for some reason, let me know and I can definitely help you there. Second thing we've been spending a lot of time on is our own conference. It's called Generative AI World. It's September 12th and 13th in Boston. This is moving a mile a minute. Pricewaterhouse is the first announced major sponsor. We have 2 other well-known names that you guys would recognize that we'll be announcing shortly. We've already got a whole set of good speakers already confirmed. Eric Okins, a chairman of a private equity firm. David Edelman's at Harvard Business School. Chip is a VC. He's 99%. John Spottyword is the COO of a insurance tech VC, or insurance startup called Jerry, and they've already implemented their own LLM large language model for customer support. He's got lots of lessons learned on that. Chris Bordlick is one of the architects at Microsoft. He'll be talking, and we're finalizing having our day one reception at the Microsoft Research Center, which is about 2 blocks from the hotel we're at. Greg Connor, or Connor Gregan, some folks may know him. He's been blogging a lot of use cases. He's New York student. He's 99% pending, but just being extra cautious there. Thomas Kinsley's at Mayo. He's confirmed. They're doing some great work out there and getting around some of the HIPAA and all different challenges with the healthcare data. Peter Schouten's the Chief Innovation Officer at Ensemble Health Partners. He's got a team of 40 on their group, and they have about anywhere between 15 and 20 AI projects a year they're doing. He's going to be talking through how they prioritize them and think through ROI and optionality in that. Dan's doing a lot of stuff with Mass General. Brian's a partner at McKinsey. Alan Savesi's Coffee Labs is a really high-end creative agency and doing some really creative stuff. One of the things they shared that they're working with one of the movie studios on the next Alien movie and do a chat box for the alien. So you can actually talk with the alien, I think, before the movie, maybe even during the movie. So really pushing the envelope of exciting things like that. Shakar Ghosh is, he confirmed today, he's a professor at Harvard Business School. Badri, who I've worked with for years, he's just finalizing his flights. And one of my co-founders, John Svioka, who was taught at Harvard Business School for 12 years and Pricewaterhouse for 10, he'll be there as well. So really exciting event, but a lot's going on. It's coming together really, really quickly. So if folks are able to attend, we'd really welcome you. And it's going to be a great event. We'll have about 325 to 350 attendees and 20 exhibitors, just tabletop exhibitors. We can go around and see OpenAI and Hugging Face and others from there. Any other announcements that people want to share?
Okay, so let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Can you see it?
We can see it, Alex.
Wonderful. Okay, so brief, let me introduce myself. My name is Alex Fedosov, and I've been in software development business for a few decades already. So ended up as a senior principal developer with Dell SecureWorks. And recently I ventured into AI world. And so now I'm a research lead with a small nonprofit foundation.org. So let's take a look what we have. Recently, OpenAI introduced a new functionality. It's API for calling functions. It's released on June 13, and it's only supported by 2 models at the moment, GPT 2.3 Turbo latest release and GPT-4, the same release version. So if you go to this web page, you can read more in details how to implement it. But you need to be careful a little bit because the example they showed on the page, generally it works, but not probably as they expected. So there are a few minor mistakes that probably you need to correct, so it would be working 100%. But nonetheless, what this all about is now you can, as a developer, you can describe functions and have the model, the GPT model, intelligently choose to output a JSON object containing arguments to call these functions. So this is a new way to reliably connect GPT capabilities with your external tools and APIs. So on this left side, you see like a JSON, how you describe your function. So I basically created a sample, a function called calculate this to do a simple arithmetic calculations, like 1 + 3, things like this. And so it accepts a string as an argument and supposed to give you a calculation result. And then on the right side, that's the actual function. It's written in Python, and that's what I call in my code with help from ChatGPT. Why it's so important? So now you can actually talk to your data in the sense then you're actually calling something of your own. This function, you don't need any training for this. It's less expensive. You don't need to provide any vector embeddings and obviously less security concerns. So you still, you're sending arguments to call this function. So in your natural language, you are telling to ChatGPT, what do you want to do? So in my case, you're telling to ChatGPT, calculate 1 + 5 divided by 7, things like this. And it just converts this natural language into a formal JSON that I can use and I can call my own function. So, and the results that I am getting from this call is they are not given to ChatGPT. So I can show it to end user, but no one, ChatGPT got zero access to this data. So that's very important from security standpoint. So we're only sending this string like a request. We are sending this to ChatGPT for conversion, and it converts this chatty request into formal JSON, how you can call this function. That's it. That's all that we are sending to ChatGPT. So it's, in a sense, it's similar to what's going on inside GPT plugins, if you're familiar with this functionality. But so ChatGPT is being used as NLP processor, converting requests made in natural language into formal function call.
Excuse me, Alex. So for the non-technical people here, help them better understand. So this is allowing software developers to go faster, or is allowing less technical people to create code, or both?
It's not for less technical people. It's rather for developers. Yep. It's specifically oriented for developers, and it's a way for them to use NLP, natural language processing, and invoke their own functionality. It's kind of like you're talking to Alexa, but you can now ask Alexa your specific business-related questions. So, for example, you can ask, show me top performant employees for the last months. So that's your own data. No one has access to it. It's not being sent to ChatGPT before. It's not being trained on this data. It's just this specific data. They're loaded by your application. It's just you're using ChatGPT to convert your free speaking language into real call to access this data.
Great, thank you. Lucinda, you have a question? Thank you for raising your hand.
Yeah, so you'd mentioned that there's no need for vector embeddings, and I'm just wondering, what is this doing that it doesn't need vector embeddings?
Because it's not trained on the data. It's just you provide this description on the left side. It's like a formal description of your functionality. It's it's a function name. It's like arguments of this function. It's a purpose of this function. And so that's what ChatGPT needs to know to call this, to form this request, to translate your natural language into formal JSON to how to call this function with specific arguments. And then you can call it inside your own code. So that's just, you're using ChatGPT as a translator, basically, from natural English language to programming language. Let's put it this way.
Okay, so this is kind of you're using OpenAI GPT as the translator.
Yes, OpenAI. You're using OpenAI API to do this translation.
Okay.
So, yep. And maybe during the day, the demo, it will become a little bit more clear. So, and let's talk about lessons learned before the demo. First of all, if somebody of you if you don't know, but OpenAI API is a paid service. So web version is free, but for using API, you need to pay per token. So it's some small fee, but if you're using this a lot, that may become more substantial. And API and documentation looks like they're still a little bit fluent, so subject to change. I discovered a few programming errors in the documentation, like I said, and fix them, obviously.
Did they pay you, Alex?
Not yet. But I submitted it to a public web forum on OpenAI website, so it's there if you want to take a look. And obviously,
they must have used Bing to write that documentation,
or ChatGPT. So because the errors, it's very subtle. So if you run the example, looks like it's working until you try to debug it. So when you try to debug it, you see that some of the arguments they're missing, and that's the problem.
Alex,
okay.
This is great. What prompted you to look at this? Was this intellectual curiosity, or did you have an application to use this for?
No, like I said, we are a small nonprofit with education. We are doing research and education in OpenAI domain. So we are looking on all types of technologies related to AI, and obviously to OpenAI as well. So,
what other questions people have? So, Alex,
let me show the demo, maybe.
Okay, please. I've got a few questions myself, but show the demo, please.
Okay, that's a simple Python application. And like I said, it's an interactive calculator. So you can ask questions like 5 plus 7 multiply by 10. Let's see.
Yep.
Nope, it didn't get me. But maybe I can try again. Okay, let's try just 1 plus 2. How about this? Okay, that's better. So my real function, so I asked ChatGPT this question, like 1 plus 2 in natural language. And it has translated this 1 plus 2 into this formal call to my function. And inside my function, with Python function eval, I can evaluate this expression and give the results back. So the exact results returned from my function is like this. It's a string that this calculation has been verified by me, and it's 3. And then I sent this result back to ChatGPT a second time. I asked him just to prepare like a formatted nicely in tabular form. So that's why it looks like this. So let's try something more complicated. Any suggestions?
Alex, if
go ahead.
just try like you did before, 5 plus 7, but just say times 10 instead of multiply by 10. Maybe it can catch the not even multiply, just 7 times 10. And hopefully order of operations, it'll times first, but we'll see. No, interesting.
5. What about 1 plus 7? Okay. Now it's translated, but it's translated into this form. So it's not in numeric form. And now it's translated correctly. So you should, with natural language processing, you can not always expect like a 100% perfect result. So you should be ready to this. So I'm doing some error handling in my case, but that's like not like a 100% error.
So, Alex, what's the use case where this capability is particularly useful? Is it protecting the data, or?
Like I said, it's more secure, and it's similar to what you are doing with plugins. So if you play it with plugins, you know it's very rich functionality, but it's pretty much the same thing when you're using like a natural language to describe what you want. And behind the scene, it's ChatGPT is converting your request in natural language. It converts it into formal language to third-party plugin. But now, instead of plugin, you are using your own application, your own code written. And so that opens, like I said, a lot of possibilities for developers. So.
That's great. Other questions? This is a quiet group today.
Go ahead. A question.
Lucinda, jump back in there.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of questions, actually. So one of them, so is this only for numbers, arithmetic operations, or is it, can I ask for a summary?
No. Like I said, it's just, it's up to you how you describe this function. So that's my application.
Yeah.
So I just, I'm saying that you need, it's like evaluate a string into numeric expression as input to a calculator. So.
Oh, to calculator. Okay. And then I just kind of to expand on Paul's question. So I don't know if I run into that much text that has like numbers written out like that, or or like, so what is the use, like, what's the everyday use case or the use case that this is meant, the problem that this is meant to solve? Because I don't necessarily have a lot of things where I'm, looking at numbers that are written out 3.2 or 2 times 4.
No. Yeah, like I said, it's up to you what function you decide to call. Like I said, it can be give me a list of my employees recently hired in last month.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay, this is okay. Yeah. So the name of this function is calculate this, and so then this is the string description and the output that you define your inputs and your outputs. So
it's free to change. Yep.
Okay, I see. So if I was looking at an FDA document and I want to kind of get the implicit logic from the document, I could write something with the strings also, I guess.
Yep. So that's like a description, and that's like a real function. Okay. And obviously, you can create your own function doing whatever you want. Get data from database, show images, show graphs, so anything.
Okay, thank you.
We'll do 2 more questions. Go ahead, Tim. Tim and then Adam. Go ahead, Tim.
I wanted to answer Lucinda's question a little further, just clarify that if that's all right.
Please go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. I think, Lucinda, as Alex said, this is really more of a tool for developers. The important thing is not so much this exact use case, but the concept of what becomes possible now that people can use natural language, and your code can then first talk to GPT, take that natural language and interpret it into a format that then the programming can use, right? He just used words 1 + 7, but first GPT changed that into a structured format so that then the code could do something with it.
Okay.
So it's sort of the fact that developers can now build this kind of front end, but have the capability on the back end to do something once it's figured out what the person's actually saying in code terms. That makes this a really powerful tool, even though this specific use case, not many people will ever need this exactly, I think. But Alex, what you're doing here, thank you, because until you were sharing, I haven't really been quite able to understand what's going on. So this has been really great.
And Adam and Alex, and from my simplistic brain, this is just yet another productivity enhancer for the developers. Is that an oversimplistic way to think about it?
Not for developers. Like I said, it's like Alexa for business.
Okay, great. All right, we'll do it. Tim, then I want to jump to Jimmy. Tim, go ahead.
Okay, I'm still trying to make sure I'm tracking here. So you constructed a JSON object with the description of your function. We're looking at you, Paul. We lost the screen.
Alex.
Anyway. Alex, so you pass a JSON function to OpenAI, to GPT, and it returns, I guess it returns an actual computable function. Is it only in Python? Because I don't see anything here that specifies Python, or can you do it in any language you want?
Yeah, you just need access to OpenAI API, and it's just a new functionality added to this. So that's like a regular chat completion, and you just pass a few extra arguments. That's it.
Okay, and what it's looking at is your description where it says evaluate a string into a numeric expression. And it says, okay, I can do that by creating a Python function using eval. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I'm passing my prompt, basically 1 + 5, etc. I pass it as a prompt, as a content. And then I pass this function description, this JSON with Python description. And I'm basically asking ChatGPT to using this function description make sense of this prompt. So basically translate this natural prompt into a formal function call.
Okay. And if you don't give it any, does it use like Python by default? Because I'm thinking if you're in business and you have, an Oracle database or a NoSQL database with all your data, you're going to have to figure out how to tell it all that stuff if you want the right function to go get it. And like you said, find me the top 3 salespeople in the Western region for the last quarter.
Yeah, I think, but by default, it's Python. I haven't played with other languages, but that's a really good question. I will give it a try. And if you ping me, I will get back to you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, but I get the idea. So the idea is that a non-programmer could write the string that says, find me the top 3 salespeople in my Western district last quarter and give me these fields about them or something. Or he probably wouldn't even say fields, but tell me what their total values were and who their top 3 customers were or something like that. And then, but somebody's got to give it more information than that, because evaluating a string to calculate is one thing, but if it's specific data to a specific institution, then somebody's got to pass along, well, it's in this database, which is of this type and requires and has these kind of access tools, something like that, right? It's got to give it enough information to generate the right function, which the non-technical person is unlikely to know, I think, right?
I think this might work. It's just if you take a look at the website, that they have examples give me your current weather in I don't know, in Boston, in Fahrenheit.
That I can see.
Yeah,
right. But that's easy because it doesn't have point specific, domain specific, whatever you want to call it, information. So find me the weather, calculate a number. Those are. Anyway, okay.
Tim, if I could jump in, I'd love to give you a real life use case. I'm not sure if we're going to use this exact code or this exact function call, but my day job, I work for one of Microsoft's largest partners in Australia, and we're looking at making a pricing calculator for the sales team that will help them figure out what to recommend in terms of our package of cloud services for Microsoft. So we're going to let them chat with an agent that will figure out roughly what the needs are of their customer, but ultimately it's going to have to convert that into JSON, into code, so that it can go query a pricing table and determine, based on that consumption, based on those requirements for CPU usage, et cetera, what is the cost for the service going to be? So what should we recommend in terms of a level? So the salesperson isn't going to see all that stuff under the hood with, configuring the query the right way so that it can request the right values from the right tables for the pricing based on the size and all of these metrics. The user is just going to be chatting about their customer and how many users they have. And this system, sort of his example here where it says description, evaluate a string into numeric expression, the system will have some complex prompt that says, when you've gotten enough information from the salesperson that you can complete all of these variables, go execute this function, run this query, come back with a pricing calculation, then recommend one of these things based on that result. But for the salesperson, it'll just be a chitty chat, and then they say, recommend the bronze service or something.
Yeah, that makes some sense.
How this actually starts plugging together.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have to show my age once again. You should look up. Maybe somebody else can help me. I think it was called XCon, because Digital Equipment Corporation, which is not even a company anymore, but which was one of the largest companies in the world for a decade, had exactly this problem in the mid '80s. Where this is a common problem in the computer industry. It's very complicated to properly configure compatible machines and services. And they had an entire expert system that did this. So you might Google XCon. It's called XCon.
I was going to say, Tim, I'm showing my age as well. I was just outside Boston in the early 80s, and we had a DEC Alpha. So I'm right there with you.
There you go.
It's the old timer club tonight. All right, I want to keep moving. Alex, thank you so much. So everyone, we usually have 1 or 2 showcases. A second showcase we have tonight. We're going from technical all the way over to the business side. Jimmy Hexter is one of our co-founders and really delighted, and he's going to walk through. Some of you have seen an early view of this framework for how businesses think a few weeks ago when John Sfiocca was here and walked through it and refined it a little bit. But go ahead, Jimmy, introduce yourself. And
yeah, hi.
You want to get out of this? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So my name is Jimmy Hexter. I'm a partner of Paul's and John's at GAI Insights. And I know John presented with you and shared with you and discussed with you a few weeks back an emerging framework we have on how businesses can think about what the urgency is for them to respond to and take advantage of generative AI today and what they should do. We've continued to work on that. And so we wanted to share that with you now again and get feedback today in terms of, is it clear? Is it actionable? And what can we do to improve it so that you and your teams and your companies at the CEO and C-suite level, as well as down through the organization, could say, either what Jimmy just said makes no sense to me at all. You got to help me with that. Or that makes sense to me, and I think I have an idea of how to proceed from here. So that's what we're going to do and what the ask is. So there's really, we're writing a paper, but if I just boil it down to the kind of 4 or 5 things we want to say. One is we want to say to people, it's really important to look at generative AI through what we're calling bifocal lenses. So if you think about glasses, the top half of the lens looks far off and the bottom half of the lens looks up close. Most of the public dialogue and what's going on in the media and the press is through the top half of the lens. Social dislocation, job loss, broad economic effect. Accenture, Goldman, and others have written great papers about that. That's important. However, in the boardrooms and in C-suites and across organizations, while people are interested in that dialogue, they're also wondering to themselves, well, okay, but what should I be doing today in my company? And that's the bottom half of the lens. So the first thing we want to say to people is look at generative AI through bifocal lenses, and we want to talk about business impact today. So look through the bottom half of the lens. When you do, what do you look for? So that's the second part of the framework. And we think you have to look for 2 things. So again, a lot of people talk about knowledge workers, but at some level, everybody's a knowledge worker. So that's not necessarily super helpful in terms of telling you, well, okay, where do I apply generative AI today? So we're saying you want to think about 2 things. One is, where in your organization is the cost base heavily weighted towards, and are people's activities heavily weighted towards manipulation of words, images, numbers, and sounds? Because frankly, that's what generative AI is able to make a difference with. So ChatGPT is a lot of the words. So that's text to text. But if you look at the broad range of applications and tools out there today, they go across words, images, numbers, and sound. And we can talk about what are the different tools that are out there that work across all of those. And the second question is, on the other axis, is how digitized are those in your organization today? Because generative AI needs that to be digitized now in order to take advantage of it. So you can almost imagine a 2x2 matrix where across one side, it's how much of your cost base is oriented towards words, images, numbers, and sounds, which we call wins. And the more generative AI can impact it. And in the vertical axis, you can say, how digitized is that today, high or low? The higher it is, the more you can do with generative AI today. Okay, so how much wins do you have? How digitized is it today? So that's how we like to think about it when you look through the bottom of the bifocal lenses. Why don't I pause for a minute? I'm sorry I'm not sharing my screen. It would probably make it easier, but there's a little bit work in progress. Let me pause for a moment and say, am I being clear? Am I not clear? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Any comments? Or should I just keep going?
This is Tim Andrews. It's clear to me, and I'm an old buddy of John's, so I guess I probably would agree with you guys anyway. But yeah, makes sense. And I think I like the bifurcation because I do agree that the immediate benefits people aren't paying enough attention to right now. And I think the only thing that I might suggest is that I think video is going to be really important in certain characteristics, and people might not get video from images.
Okay, good point. Thank you for that. Lucinda, you have your hand up also.
Yes. So you mentioned that if it's winds, words, images, and
numbers and sounds. Numbers and sounds.
I mean, aren't most of those digitized anyway? So isn't that kind of like a double axis? Aren't the axes almost talking about the same thing?
So it's a great question. We've actually been debating that a lot. So, where would things not be digitized today? So there are, particularly in words and numbers, there are still a lot of businesses and companies where there's a lot still on paper. So, for example, you go into a doctor's office and what's the first thing they do? They hand you a clipboard and you have to fill everything out by paper. Now, eventually it gets typed in, but what does that look like when that happens? So we're struggling a little bit with it. It's a great point. If it's everything is actually all digitized today, then we have to continue to work on it. We're just not sure that's true because there's still so much paper in organizations. But it's an excellent point.
And I guess the other question, which is kind of a parallel question, is if it's not digitized, I mean, they've got a whole other thing to do before even working on this. So I'm just wondering if there could be some axes, like different axes that are kind of in the next stage. Because, paper is around, but on the other hand, if people still have paper, are they going to be at the leading edge of implementing this stuff? Maybe not.
Well, actually, that's a great segue, if I could, to the next step. So if you take that matrix and you say, okay, how much is wins on one axis and how much is digitized today on the other? If you're and I'll add it to it, it's particularly acute if your end product that you deliver to the customer is wins, is digitized, if it's entertainment, if it's right. So there are some that are heavily digitized, but the end product is still a physical product, and some that are heavily digitized, but the end product is digitized. So if you're in the upper right, we're saying you're in the crucible. Like it's happening right now. The pressure is on because it's happening, right? To your point. If you're on the right-hand side where it's heavily wins based, but it's not so digitized today, because I want to get right to your point, Lucinda. We're saying somebody's going to come along and digitize that stuff and then make it happen. So we're saying those people, they're next in line. And either an incumbent's going to do it or an innovator's going to do it, but they're next in line. So we're calling that quadrant next in line. The people on the upper left, well, they're holding a lever because their whole industry isn't going to transform. So steel manufacturing, I mean, what do we have up there? I'll give you examples in each, but the logistics industry, oil and gas. Oil and gas is a great example. We still need pipelines, we still need refineries, but wow, that exploration process where they process terabytes of geologic data, that's going to change radically, right? Hospitals, we still need to, you still need to physically deliver the care, but all of those electronic medical records and everything like that's going to change radically. So we call that upper left holding a lever, because you're going to change your business a lot, but the end product is still going to be the end product. And then the bottom left, which is not terribly wins based and not heavily digitized today, well, we call that in the balcony. You're kind of watching the stage, you're watching other people play. So who's in there? Well, you can think about spa services, landscaping, house painting, janitorial services. So just again, in the crucible upper right, entertainment, software, financial services, education. Next in line, physical therapy, real estate development, home decor. Upper left, holding a lever, logistics, retail, oil and gas, hospitals. Lower left, in the balcony, dry cleaning, landscaping, house painting, et cetera. So let me pause there. Lucinda, does that kind of answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom one, with the house cleaning, landscaping, et cetera. I think that's definitely right. The only other question that I would have, again, I don't want to take stuff.
No, please.
Is for the geological ones. I mean, that's going to be. I mean, there's already those guys are already using computational stuff that's probably incredibly rich in IoT. So that.
How much will it add?
Isn't that already happening? Isn't AI already happening there? Or
great question.
It may not be generative, and I don't know if you need generative when you've got such a, a fire hose of data coming in from those industries.
Great question. Thank you. Other thoughts and questions on the framework?
Yeah, this is Tim Andrews again. So the other thing that struck me is this is a fine framework from the, I don't know how to describe it, from the dimensions of the type of data and the rich and the the digitization. So it's a fine 2x2, but it seems to me there's another really important dimension, which is size. So many technological advances that change a lot, the advantage really goes to the small, much more so. So small companies that didn't used to be able to compete will suddenly be able to compete. I think there's a whole large companies will try and adopt this, and they may get further faster because they can't prevent the adoption. It's kind of like the spreadsheet back in the day, and some of these things where they will struggle to adopt it at the enterprise level, but it'll get adopted. But that's not going to get them the kind of leverage that a 10-person company or a 100-person company can get in a real hurry that just couldn't do certain things before and all of a sudden can. And I think that's one of the biggest things about these tools. They give you an enormous amount of leverage for non-technical people in particular.
That's a great point. So in other words, does it level the playing field to some extent and take away some of the advantages of scale?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that point. That's a super good point.
Yeah, Martin's got his hand up.
Oh, I didn't see any. I'm sorry. I'm on a screen where I can't see everybody at once. So next question, Martin. I apologize.
Okay, just a couple of comments about the horizontal axis. And I have to say, I don't like it very much.
Okay.
And part of the reason I don't like it is because digitization doesn't mean that it's automatically useful. For geological information, sure, it's highly structured. You can ask anything of it, as Lucinda was saying. But other times, just because you've scanned a 50-page paper document into a PDF, it doesn't mean it's useful. It's non-structured or semi-structured. So I'm more interested in what you need to add to the data to make it useful in terms of findability, in terms of understanding the semantics of it. Like a whole video is a black box, for example, but AI would be useful to open that black box and say, these are useful dimensions with which to, first of all, understand that black box and then combine that information with other previous black boxes. So that's what I do.
Right. That's a great point. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's really interesting. Do you think it always has to be structured data to be useful, or is it contextually specific?
Sorry, can I have that question again, Paul?
Does it have to be structured data? Does data eventually have to get digitized into structured data to be of value?
Not necessarily. In the text world, people do a couple of things. They either they either structure the data by overlaying a semantics on it, or alternatively, they leave it semi-structured and add a variety of metadata that we've all seen in products, video products, or tagging products for videos or images, and they don't open the box, but they do tag it richly.
Great. Good. Any other questions for her feedback for Jimmy? Thanks, everyone. Appreciate that. I want to end the last 5 minutes on just sharing other things. One thing I want to share is I gave 2 AI talks last Thursday here in Boston. And between both those talks, 5 people talked to me about how they were at companies that banned ChatGPT and they were doing shadow usage. And one guy even he would bring his personal laptop in, go through the internet on his personal cell phone, use ChatGPT, find some information, and then email it from his personal email for the work. So I think it's a little bit like the smartphones and browsers and Twitter. When something's this radically different and this transformative in terms of productivity or power, the organization's just going to go get it, and you can issue all the decrees you want. But it's just interesting. Anyway, I'm just struck by and oh, by the way, all 5 were proud of it. They weren't, they were sharing it with me because they were like, Paul, I'm an early adopter and we love this stuff. And even though my work won't let me use it, I'm still finding a way to use it.
Yeah, that reminds me very much of the spreadsheet, as I said.
Yes.
That was what the killer app, as we used to call it. And people would buy Apple IIs and just to bring them into work because, it took them forever to get anything from the IT organization. They could do it in their spreadsheet in no time. So, yeah, you can't prevent people from using this. I wrote a whole article about that, but that's another story. Mm-hmm.
Great. Any other last contributions?
Yeah. Yes, I'll go ahead, throw one out here. What I am realizing is what's starting to become clearer is, let's call it, some of the nuances of use, which is, I think, is why a number of companies have banned it or discouraging it. For an example, the nuance of, and I'll just summarize it, write me an article of 1,000 words and give me sources. ChatGPT will make up sources, and none of those sources will be legitimate because the article wasn't derived from any particular sources. It ingested many articles, let's call it 1,000 articles, and it rephrased those articles and generated a bunch of sentences based on those articles as if it read them, and then created sources that were complete fiction. So people have, to counter that, people have said, write me the article and summarize the theme of this article, now give me sources for this theme, and are connecting. So asking to provide sources versus asking it for sources is a nuance. One, you get garbage. The other, you get excellent sources.
Kevin, that's really interesting. Is that with the Bing plugin? Or just by itself?
I'm not using it with the plugin. So that's one. And this other distinction, I think I've mentioned to some of you this one before. The nuance of give me a bunch of quotes by Irish poets on this topic, and I get garbage, but give me a bunch of quotes by poets born in Ireland, and I get brilliance. And the nuance between Irish born, between Irish, where I was getting Bill Gates and Margaret Thatcher and Winston Churchill, because they were associated with so many articles about the Irish. So the nuance between Irish and born in Ireland is not clear to everyone. And I think this is why companies are very nervous, is we're seeing, or what's appearing is a bunch of nuances, like provide sources, Irish versus born in Ireland. These are subtle trial and error things. Once you hear them once, you know them. But if you didn't hear them and you didn't check your work, you can get garbage at scale and speed. And that's what's making companies very nervous, is they're the ones, some of them are like, only these 5 people are allowed to wave the wand of ChatGPT because they have been inducted into the dark art. But you 5 over there are stumbling around, turning rabbits into tadpoles and frogs into horses. You don't know what you're doing. You're waving that wand everywhere.
It's great.
Have you talked to companies about that? Because I have only talked to one, maybe 2, I guess. And actually, my reaction is not that. They're telling me it's lawyers and the whole copyright issue and proprietary information issue, that they're just super paranoid that they're going to lose their intellectual property.
Yeah,
Kevin, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kevin. No. Well, I was going to say the other thing I think is happening is, we're not even at Excel or even Lotus 1, 2, 3. We're at like VisiCalc if we all want to show our age, right? So, I think we're at the point where we have both a nascent technology and unsophisticated users. But if you fast forward, and we're going to fast forward 2 years, in spreadsheet land, you fast forwarded 40 years. But you wouldn't graduate from a finance department in a business school now if you couldn't, use Excel to build, with pivot tables to build sophisticated LBO models. But way back when, only a couple of people could. So I think the problem you're identifying is clear, but soon it will be an artifact of the moment in time, and it will. That's my guess, right? It will disappear. But I think you're right; it's happening today.
So what I've seen two companies do is they're starting to let's call it authorized users or certified to use appropriately in our organization, which is akin to, if you're going to be using it for anything that's going to touch a client or anything outside of the company, it can only come from these people, but the rest of you can play with it. Seems to be the compromise, but you can't use it for any work that leaves these walls until somebody reviews your prompt. So now there's prompt reviewers coming in just to check that the prompt is right, is better, is well structured.
Let's do one more question from Adam, then we'll end. Go ahead, Adam.
Thanks, Tim. I'll unmute, then lower my hand. Just to jump in on this, where I fall in, I guess the question would be, are these companies that currently have knowledge workers that access third-party services and tools through the browser? Why should this be treated any differently, right? So the way we're approaching it at our company, at least what I've recommended is the mission was to enable our sales staff as quickly as possible. We have a program of work. We've begun to build an internal model that will have safeguards. It will use the backend with OpenAPI to do the queries, but actually control our data and create a safe place where the sellers, for example, can interact and don't have to worry about that because it's kept within our walls. Meanwhile, though, we're saying if you want to expense the monthly cost of GPT Plus, just as a salesperson with your cellular and all your other meals or whatever, just put in that $20 a month as an expense. The company will reimburse you, but you are bearing the responsibility for using all of the existing policy around acceptable use of third party. But it's pretty straightforward where that lies, and everyone should already know how they should be expected to behave. So this shouldn't, that's where I'm trying to go with it, so that there's at least a way forward without it being so obstructionist.
Yeah. Has anyone seen any platforms or areas other than Google Docs, for example, where people are collating their cumulative prompts to share with others as a knowledge sharing? How are people doing that or seeing that being done?
GitHub's doing a bunch of those, aren't they?
Yeah, I was going to say there's some good GitHubs. Also, I guess the OpenAI Discord has a bunch of good stuff on there as well.
Yeah, Martin just poached learningprompts.org. Got a lot of good stuff as well. Well, guys, everybody, we're going to end. Thank you very much for another good meeting, and hopefully see many of you next week. Thank you.